Good day. For today's pre-recorded lecture, we're going to tackle about chemical reactions, specifically the general types of chemical reactions. Before this video, I've already pre-recorded a lecture all about balancing of reactions or chemical reactions, and you need to watch that first before coming into this particular lecture. So let's begin. Okay, so chemical reactions is defined as a process in which a substance or substances is changed into one or more new substances. So technically, in summarizing this definition, we can say that chemical reaction is all about changes. No? As long as may mababago, may mapapalitan, may mabubuo, then that is what the chemical reaction is. But please take note that in a chemical reaction, it is substance or substances, atoms, elements, or compounds that are involved. So here we have four general types of chemical reactions that we're going to discuss one by one. First, we have synthesis, also known as your combination reaction. The second one is decomposition reaction. Third would be single displacement reaction. And lastly, you have your double displacement or metathesis reaction. So let's begin first by defining or learning. Let's begin with discussing what synthesis or combination reaction is first. So synthesis reaction occurs when the reactants combine to form a single product. The general form is A plus B will form C. Okay? Or it could either be A plus B will form AB. So for a synthesis reaction, from the name itself, no? Pag sinabi mo kasing synthesis, meaning may mabubuo, may mapoproduce. And from the name combination, you can deduce its meaning na pag narinig mo yung salitang combination, it means there is something na magko-combine. So ganun ang nangyayari sa ating synthesis reaction. So as you can see here, we have sulfur and then we also have oxygen or oxygen gas. And then when they were combined, you have SO2 or sulfur dioxide. So here, as you can see, we have reactants that produce a product, no? But not just simply reactants and products. Please take notes that the reactants that we have were combined together to form the product. Kaya nga siya tinawag na synthesis or combination reaction. Here, we have also two magnesium solid and oxygen gas. And then pag pinagsama mo sila, you can form two magnesium oxide. So yung magnesium oxide na form siya because of magnesium and oxygen. So that is what is synthesis or combination reaction is all about, no? May mafo-form, may mako-combine, and from there magkakaroon ka ng product. Okay? Next, we have what we call decomposition reaction. For decomposition reaction, it occurs when a single reactant decomposes usually by heating or applying electricity to form many products. The general form would be A will be decomposed into B plus C or any other product. Or it can also be AB to form A plus B. So this is the opposite of your combination reaction, also known as your synthesis reaction. Because in a decomposition reaction, from the name itself, it decomposes. Katulad ng isang bangkay or isang nabubulok na material, no? Nagde-disintegrate siya. So that is the very concept of decomposition reaction. You have a compound that will be separated into its individual elements or other compounds. So, tatandaan nyo sa decomposition reaction, may malaki kang element na maghihiwalay. Okay? So, ganun yung nangyayari dito. Kaya siya tinawag na decomposition reaction. As you can see here, from H2O, na-disintegrate siya into H. We know water has hydrogen, di ba? And also oxygen. Kasi yung water din natin may oxygen din. And then we have here KClO3, which decomposes into KCl. Dito yung KCl natin. And then O2, which is nandito. So, every coefficient na lang dyan ay nilagay natin to make it balance. Basta tatandaan nyo, for decomposition reaction, you have a compound that will disintegrate or maghihiwalay. While for synthesis, it is rather you have your individual compound or substances that will form a new and bigger compound. Okay? Next, we have what we call single displacement reaction, which occurs when when one element replaces another element. Very simple lang intindihan tong single displacement kasi pag narinig natin yung salitang displacement, meaning ang ibig sabihin nun ay replacement or may mapapalitan. So it follows the format AB plus C will form AC plus B. So paano ba natin gagawin yan? So meron ka ditong compound, right? So we label it as AB and then meron tayong C. So AB, C. Tapos si C, papalitan niya si B. So you have not like that. Not necessarily like that. Siguro we don't follow this AB plus C format. Instead, what we follow is cation, anion, tapos depending on kung ano dito, kung ano yung given natin na solo dito, either a cation or an anion, yun yung magre-replace dito. So, pwede natin gawin na ganito na lang. So, tandaan natin, sige, label natin. So, we have a cation, kasi pag ito yung susundan natin, medyo malilito kayo. So, meron kang cation, and then meron kang anion. So, please take note that cations are the one who has positive charges, and you have your anions, which are the ones who has negative charges. So, zinc is a metal, so technically, that's a cation. So, dahil cation to, the cation will replace also the cation. So hence, zinc will combine with nitrate, no? So that will be this combination. So as you can see, yun yung nanbuo dito. You have zinc and then nitrate. You have zinc, nitrate, and then yung pinalitan natin, which is silver, solo na lang siya. So silver will be the one na masosolo and then zinc will combine. So that's the format of a single displacement, no? So bigay pa tayo ulit isang example. So si magnesium, dahil metal siya, technically that's a cation. Then hydrogen, of course, that's a cation. And then chlorine or chloride, that's your anion. So mapapansin natin na si magnesium may cation or siya yung magre-replace, and then dahil cation siya, i-replace niya yung cation doon sa compound natin. So, C for C, A for A. So, here, magpo-form tayo ng magnesium chloride because Mg will combine with Cl and then H will have its solo moment. Okay. So, may tanong kayo siguro, like for example, sir, paano naman po pag anion po yung solo? So, papakita ni sir paano yung nangyayari yon. So, for example, you have HF. O, diba? Meron kang HF plus you have your bromine. O, diba? Here, we have a typical template of a single displacement reaction. So, pagtatandaan mo sa single displacement reaction is may isang papalitan. But it's a combination between a compound, meaning may nag-combine na cation and an ion, and then you have either a cation or an anion na solo. So dahil, label natin to ha. So dahil hydrogen here is your cation, meaning positively charged siya, and then your fluorine here is your anion. Tama? And then bromine is an example of an ion because it is a non-metal. So technically, bromine here will replace the anion in the compound. So the new product will be, papakita natin yung new product. The new product will be HBr because bromine replaces fluorine para siya yung mag-combine kay hydrogen, and now fluorine will have its solo moment. Okay, so yun yung sinasabi dito ni sir. Not necessarily it follows AB plus C and then C will replace B, but instead kung ano yung C natin or kung ano yung solo natin sa reactant, depende yon kung cation or anion siya. Kung cation siya, papalitan niya yung cation dun sa compound. Pag anion siya, papalitan niya yung anion sa compound. Basta tatandaan natin, for single displacement, you have a compound plus an element or an atom. Okay? How about for double displacement? Okay. For double displacement naman, from the name itself, you have double meaning dalawa, and displacement meaning dalawa yung mapapalitan. But technically, the easier way to remember double displacement is magkakaroon lang ng pagpapalitan between the partners. Okay, so magsiswitch lang ng partners. So double displacement, also known as your metathesis, no? So titignan nyo dito, you have your AB plus CD will form AD plus CB. So meaning nagpalitan sila ng partners. So si B napunta kay C and then si D napunta kay A. But technically, it doesn't follow na ganito lagi, no? Na parang kung sino yung nauna, siya yung magpapalit dun sa pangalawa. Not like that. So the best way to determine na single displacement yung isang reaction is of course, tignan mo kung may pareho kang compound. Nagkakaroon lang naman tayo ng double displacement, also known as your metathesis, pag meron tayong compound na dalawa. So, pag sinabi mong compound, meron kang cation and anion na nag-combine. So, katulad nito, sodium, this is a cation. Sulfur is an anion. Then, you have hydrogen as your cation and then chlorine as your anion. So, dahil nag-discuss na tayo about bonding, sabi natin, cation will always form with an anion, diba? So, parang metal plus non-metal or cation with a positive charge plus an ion with a negative charge. So, sodium will combine to the anion on the opposite side. So, sodium will combine with chlorine and then yung isang combination natin will be hydrogen with sulfur. So, that's the reason why we were able to form sodium chloride here because cation si sodium, anion si chlorine, and then H2S. Mapapansin nyo, hindi si sulfur yung nauna kahit siya yung nasa unang compound because sulfur is an ion. So, tatandaan natin na it's always going to be cation first before anion. So, hydrogen first and then sulfur. That's the reason why we were able to form hydrogen sulfide. So, let's look at the next example. So, here you have barium, which is a metal. So, that's a cation. Chlorine, a non-metal. That's an anion. Sodium is a metal. So, that's cation. And of course, sulfate, not necessarily a non-metal, but all of its components are non-metal, and sulfate is known as an anion. So please take note that the combination here is that cation plus anion. So when it comes to switching pairs, si barium kukunin niya si sulfate, and then si sodium kukunin niya si chloride. And that's the reason why we were able to form barium sulfate, cation, barium, sulfate, anion, and then we have sodium chloride, which is sodium cation, and then chlorine as your anion. But you don't have to remember how these are formed. So in your quizzes and in your activities or exam, you're not the one who's going to predict the final product. Instead, I'm going to just showcase an example of a chemical reaction, and then you're the one who's going to identify what type of chemical reaction would that be. So it could either be synthesis reaction, decomposition, single displacement, and double displacement. So ganun lang yung gusto kong matandaan nyo here. You don't have to practice yourself producing the product or trying to figure out the product, predicting. No? Here, what you're going to just remember is how can you identify a chemical reaction. So, as you can see, this examples of chemical reaction follows specific format. So, going back sa taas, pag sinabi nating synthesis, meron tayong combination. So, meron kang mga atoms magko-combine and to form an compound, no? Or meron kang elements that will combine to form a compound, no? From marami, magiging konti. And then for the composition reaction, you have a compound breaking down into other smaller components, no? So, water, nag-break down siya into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. You have your potassium chloride, it breaks down into potassium chloride and oxygen gas. So, here, meron kang konti, dumami. Kaya siya decomposition, no? And then for single displacement, it's about replacing one of either the cation or the anion in the compound. So for single displacement, ang tatandaan mo, meron kang compound and meron kang element or atom. So cation replaces cation, an ion replaces an ion. So that is single displacement. While for double displacement naman, what happens here is that you have two compounds switching whatever needed to be switched. So, two compounds dalawang compounds, may cation and an ion. Then, the cation from the first compound will switch its partner to the anion of the second compound, and then vice versa, no? So here, ang tatandaan mo lang is nagkaroon ng pagpapalit or switching. So on that note, we're done discussing the general types of chemical reactions. Again, please wait for the instruction on other pre-recorded lectures, or if there will be activities that will be provided in order to ensure that you've learned something. Okay, thank you so much.